Hi guys, Ming here from Ming. Today to talk about the 21 Series 3. This is one of the most complicated watches we've produced, both in terms of functionality and actual execution. There's a lot going on here, so we're going to break it down into a few parts. Let's start by talking about the headline feature of this watch, which is of course its fused borosilicate dial. Now, borosilicate is a type of glass. In this case, what we've done is we take a borosilicate glass puck. It has voids lasered into it. It's further processed to remove all the raw material and to finish the inside of the voids in a certain way. Now, on top of that, all of these voids are not regular shaped cavities. Like with sapphire, for instance, when we laser into a sapphire crystal, we can only make box-shaped cavities because of the nature of the material. Now, borosilicate is a lot more flexible in that sense, so actually if you look very closely at the cavities in the Series 3's dial, you'll see that they have a profile that extends radially, that slopes radially, and it slopes in two other axes as well. So actually, the voids themselves form twisted little boxes that then we further process by filling them with superluminova. Now, whilst the lasering process and the borosilicate processing part is very high technology and fully automated, the second part of this, where we fill the dial with superluminova, is actually very much reliant on old school craftsmanship because there is no way to fill all of the unevenly sized and volume voids automatically. So unfortunately, somebody does actually sit there with a micropipette and fill the voids one by one. That's all 600 of them in the Series 3's dial. It's an extremely luminous dial and actually has nearly 20 times the superluminova that we put into something which is already very bright, for example, like the H41 or the Bluefin, which are our divers. At Ming, we like our layering, and we like the fact that the more layers you have in a dial, the more interactions it can have with light, and the more different personalities the watch can take on. It means that as you live with a piece and you wear it more often, it presents a different side to you every day, and it's something that you only really get to experience with long-term enjoyment. Now, we have many visible layers in the Series 3. Firstly, you're looking at the base plate of the movement right at the very bottom, which is a rose gold finished Agengraphe chronograph. On top of that, the majority of the watch is dominated by the borosilicate dial and its voids. Now, under certain reflections, what happens is that the base plate actually becomes brighter than the borosilicate dial and the whole thing inverts. So you'll end up having dark cavities or dark luminous blocks on top of a very bright rose gold surface. But yet, under further different conditions, what happens is the top surface of the borosilicate dial then turns into a mirror. So we have a traditional inversion in the sense that it goes from intense high contrast to mirror finish, and then the mirror itself reflects the scales on the top of the inside crystal. Now, what this means is the watch is a difficult one to photograph, and it's a difficult one to capture the essence of, because in reality it's got 4 or 5 different faces, depending on how the light hits it. And it depends on, again, not just how the light hits it, but also the color temperature of the light, because that also affects which parts reflect, whether it's the rose gold bits or the cooler white luminova blocks. In reality, it's a watch that looks like it's got a lot more going on the dial side than should be physically possible by the apparent depth of the case. The 21 Series 3's case is a very elegant construction that's made up of 5 primary pieces. The movement sits within a case ring that's then bracketed from either side by the flying blade lugs, and then sandwiched from the top and the bottom by the bezels that hold the crystals. In addition to that, the top main crystal bezel has got 4 chimneys. Those chimneys pass through holes in the lugs and the case band, interlocking together with the case back, and then the whole thing's secured by only 4 screws. It means that it's very easy to assemble, it's very easy to service, and extremely rigid because everything comes together like an interlocking jigsaw puzzle. In the case of the Series 3, the bezels and the lugs are made of 18-karat 5N rose gold, and the case midband is DLC titanium. What this means is that with this case, rather than being entirely made of rose gold and both quite heavy and visually loud, we have a slightly more subtle case where a black strap flows into a black case band. It looks like a nice continuous line that's then bracketed by the rose gold of the case from the top and the bottom and the sides. It's a very light looking, airy case, despite the fact that it's actually the largest case we've made at 41.5 millimeters. This is necessary to accommodate the very large movement and the mechanics of the 2 pushes. Let's talk a little bit about the movement. The 21 Series 3 is powered by the Agengraphe, which is arguably one of the most interesting and most innovative chronographs of recent times. It's also one of the few that's been completely redesigned from the ground up, and it's an all-new construction. Now, our version of the Agengraphe is in a unique execution that ditches the hour counter, it ditches the automatic winding mechanism, mainly because it allows us to get the height of the movement itself down to about 5.6 millimeters. This is important because it's also central minutes and central seconds chronograph, where the chronograph hands share the same cannon pinion as the hour and minute hands. If we had too many hands on this stack, whilst it makes the watch easy to read, the problem is that it also means the whole watch has to become very thick. So in the interest of reinterpreting the classical 1 hour chronograph, we've kept the watch both manual winding and only with a 60-minute counter. Now, the 60-minute counter also has instantaneous jumping minutes, which means that until the second hand tips over at 60 exactly, the minute hand stays where it is. The movement has a number of other interesting features. Even though it features a relatively traditional lateral clutch system, it has an anti-shock coupling, it's got adjustable depthing, and it's got anti-shock teeth, where the teeth themselves are split, and they basically absorb the coupling force of the chronograph every time it starts and stops. The entire chronograph mechanism is contained within a central core, timekeeping's towards the sides. It runs 2 barrels and has an extended power reserve over 60 hours. In our version of the chronograph, the plates and bridges are finished with 5N rose gold coating and polished anglage. And one of the barrels is open worked so that you can see the state of wind of the spring. When the spring is coiled tightly towards the middle, the watch is fully wound.